Good evening. Welcome to the Joint City Council and Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for the City of Hayden. It is June 30th, 2025. The time is approximately 5:33. May we get a roll call?
Yes.
Roll call of City Council members.
Yes, we'll do council first and then planning and zoning. So we have Councilmember DePriest. Yep. Councilmember Schaefer.
Yes.
Councilmember White.
Yes.
Council President Roeder.
Yes.
Thank you. One second. There we go. And planning and zoning, we have Chair Taylor.
Here.
Commissioner Erickson.
Present.
Commissioner Gibson is absent. Commissioner Morris
Here.
and Commissioner Johnson absent. We do have quorum with 3. We are good to go.
Okay. All right. Our one and only item on tonight's workshop is a comprehensive plan amendment review.
Pledge of allegiance.
I'm sorry?
Pledge of allegiance.
Skip it. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. I believe our goal tonight is to review the red line drawings or edits of our comprehensive plan as outlined by SCJ from Spokane. Welcome.
Good evening. I'm Mike Beharry with SCJ Alliance, and I'm here with Aaron McCurr. We're going to go ahead and start our presentation. So like the mayor said, we are here for 2 items. The first one is to gather final input on the red line draft, and the second is to obtain feedback on the future land use map. So to give you an update on where we are with comp plan work. So SCJ Alliance, we've completed the first round of red lines to the comprehensive plan. That draft was submitted to city staff for their review. Staff has reviewed it and provided comments back to us. We've taken the city staff's comments and put it back into the comp plan and then submitted back to city staff for their distribution. So before we get into the land use map, are there any questions or other items you'd like to put input into the red lines?
We have a comment a chance to comment as we move through the various, I guess, red lines.
Okay,
What, you're saying now?
we can go through those comments now. That's what,
Well, I mean, there's several issues, like when we get into the land use and things like that.
okay,
There's several wordings that I would like to maybe address.
okay,
So I'm gonna talk to the land use chapter. We specifically did not make the red lines to the land use chapter because we wanted to get through the future land use map, changes that are proposed, and then once the council kind of decides on the end result of the future land uses, we were gonna update those red lines accordingly. So the land use chapter has been hardly, not at all touched.
I don't even know if the land use description, I guess is what I'm on.
Right?
And so we don't want to talk about those?
We can, but I'm just, we recognize that that chapter is gonna get some further, updates in accordance with how we migrate with the future land use map.
Okay. It's basically just, words are very important, I've learned over my
Yep.
3.5 years here.
Yeah.
And the more specific, that you have to be very specific. And I see a large number of uses where high density and mixed use, things need to be scrutinized very closely.
okay. We can definitely go over the maps and then take all your feedback and incorporate those fine-tuned language edits that you would like to incorporate.
Thank you.
So let's move on to just a quick refresher between.
I have a question.
Sure.
So, how many other times are we gonna have to be able to discuss these items and make changes?
As far as
As
the
far
red line
as
edits,
wording, yeah, the red line edits.
I want to check with Donna on that, but after today's meeting, all your edits would have to come through Donna and then back to us to incorporate. But the timing is, we're going to we'll go through the timing at the end of the presentation on when this goes to planning commission and goes to city council. So we probably need to figure out that last timing, when your last edits will come in.
And you guys are probably going to want to have a conversation over where are your most critical edits, because you don't get to each unilaterally direct individual changes. So you have to have a consensus on what you want that language to be,
Yeah.
hence the need for the workshop. So
Yeah.
I think you're gonna want to identify have an agreement on what areas you as a group think need revisions, and then wordsmith that together, because again, you don't unilaterally get to direct changes. It's a group effort.
Right.
All right, we'll just start off with a quick refresher on the difference between a zoning map and a future land use map. So a zoning map, it's an official legally binding document adopted through an ordinance. It regulates current land use and development standards, including building heights, setbacks, and density. It's parcel specific. It's what is my property zone? Am I a residential? Am I commercial? It directly governs what can be built and how the property is used. So the zoning map is utilized by developers, property owners, and city staff for permitting and compliance purposes. Now, the future land use map, it's an advisory in nature. It's part of the comprehensive plan, but not legally enforceable on its own. It depicts the community's vision for future growth, guiding long-term planning and policy decisions. Its broad categories indicate intended land uses such as commercial, residential, or mixed use. It serves as a policy guide and does not directly regulate land use. It's employed by planners and policymakers to make informed decisions on zoning changes and infrastructure development. So here's a hypothetical. This property right here is zoned single-family residential, and a developer's purchased it and wants to rezone this property to mixed use. So you can see on the right side here, in the comprehensive plan, the future land use map indicates it is mixed use, but the zoning is single-family residential. So they'd make an application, come forward with the proposal for mixed use, and it meets the comprehensive plan, so it's likely that this property would be rezoned to mixed use. Another scenario would be a developer says this would be a perfect spot for a gas station. I'm in single-family residential zoning maps, we're surrounded by single-family. We look to what the future land use map indicates, and the future land use map indicates, oh, it's supposed to stay single-family. So that application would most likely be denied and not approved based on it's not in conformance with the comprehensive plan, future land use map.
But just to be clear, it would go through planning and zoning and then potentially to city council.
Yeah, and
So these,
go through those steps.
so our future land use map is not automatic. Everything still goes through the processes.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question. In that scenario, with the first one, if that one was denied, the rezone, would that be considered a taking?
I would check with your attorney on that, but there's a lot of other things that an application has to be met. And one of those things is it compatible, is it in conformance with the land use map? But there's other items involved with going through those
5 standards of approval for a zone map.
further standards for approval. They'd have to meet all the standards, not just one of them. So the zoning map dictates current land use regulations and is enforceable by law. The future land use map outlines the community's aspirations and visions for the future development. So the future land use map is in direct response to the new goals and policies that you've all developed and went through. That's those steps. So as far as a residential designation in the future land use map is an area is intended to support a range of housing types, single-family, duplex, townhomes, and promote a more compatible, walkable neighborhood design. And the supporting goal would be to maintain an attractive mix of land use zones and housing options. And the supporting policy would be to encourage a variety of cohesive housing options in infill projects. The result promotes a walkable neighborhood that aligns with the intent of a residential future land use map designation, supporting a variety of housing options. So the updated comprehensive plan, goals, and policies are interconnected into the future land use map. So now on to the future land use map. This is the current existing future land use map for the city of Hayden. You guys went through an exercise where you guys marked up the map with different areas where you thought would be appropriate for the next future land use map. That has been digitized and it's now in a computer format, and new colors were put on it as an example that shows it's different from the zoning map. And this is the map that the city council marked up, and it's now digitized. City staff has also looked at this map and made a simplified version that puts all the residential uses under one layer. And they also worked some areas on this side of the future proposed Hutter bypass. So the two differences between those two maps are the here's the legend for the ones that you guys marked up, and here's the staff's proposal, where they put residential, they combine mixed residential, residential suburban, and residential into one land use.
Because they're all single-family residential uses as a land use type.
So those are the two maps we'll be kind of discussing tonight.
I'm out. Please, Art, it's very distracting to try and listen to the conversation and hear you talk at the same time, please.
Question,
Sure.
for transition, can you give a definition of that outline?
That transition zone will be something that'll come forward, if an application comes forward, they'll be like, they don't really know what the Hutter bypass is gonna be at that time. So at that time, it's kind of being open to interpretation of what that zone is gonna be at the time of development, which will go through planning commission and city council. So it's a zone that has a lot of flexibility to be residential, commercial, industrial. It's kind of a flexible zone.
So this seems to be our first data point where you're looking for direction, so that council and planning and zoning can understand better. What are the pros and cons of the staff proposed simplifications versus articulating each of the types of residential?
The pros and cons for the pros for the staff, it's just, there's more flexibility, but there's also opportunity for mixed use to be placed into places where you don't want it. Or not mixed use, mixed residential. So higher intensity residential could be incorporated into a single family zone.
Under the staff proposed simplification or under the proposal from council?
Under the staff simplification. I go back to that example. Let's see. So if it was all, the future land use map has 3 different zones. So this is mixed residential, single family. So if someone came in for an application that says it's just all residential, say I want to put mixed use over here. Well, it's compatible with residential, so it's just one zone. So any one of those zoning districts could be land into that residential designation.
Donna, can you provide a little more
Yeah.
clarity? Because I'm a little,
Yeah, I know.
I either forgot about this or I'm just a little caught off guard.
Come up here to the map. Up here to a map that doesn't have these zones. So,
Can we go back to the other maps?
yeah, yeah, that's great. So,
Well, this is the 2 different ones.
okay. So, one of the things that we heard from the council and the public when we have been looking at the future land use map for the last umpteen years is the fact that council wanted the ability to have the flexibility to be able to look at each zone map that came in on a case-by-case basis and determine if it met the goals and the policies. So if you've got a vision and you're looking at the fact that residential suburban is single-family residential on large lots, mixed residential is single-family residential on a variety of lot sizes, and that detached single-family residential, our R1 that we have everywhere, is on a minimum lot size of 80 to 50. But if you have a quirky piece of property that may not be here, it might be, up here, I don't know, we'll just throw that out there. And you want the ability to develop that piece of property in accordance to mixed residential, and that one piece of property as an infill development may make really good sense to be able to put some cottage homes on it. What's happening today is you look at the map and say, oh, it's not in mixed residential because it's not in one of these blue areas. And so that automatically discounts you and you can't utilize this tool for this infill development that may make sense in this location where your goals and policies that you've got in place may make perfect sense to put that in this location. So we tried to listen to you as well as public and recognize that this is a land use that is single-family residential, and also allow the council and the public the flexibility or the ability to look at the goals and policies that we've worked really, everybody here, has worked really hard on, and say, does it meet these goals and policies? And then if it does, okay, that standard's met. You also have to meet does it make sense with the neighborhood context that you're in? That's also a standard. So even though it might still check this box that this infill development works really good here and it follows the goals and policies, it may not be able to check the box that says it doesn't work in this location, because those are the rest of the standards. They kind of work all together in those zone requests. What we were trying to do was also get rid of the idea that, oh, Lordy, we're going to have all this high density everywhere that there's blue, higher density in all of those areas that are blue, when we all recognize that a good chunk of those are either already developed and are going to have to work really hard to develop in a higher density, or they're in areas that don't intend to develop in that fashion. So we were again following kind of the direction of migrating away from the idea that it's a zone, future zone area, but identify that we want that, all of this area that is showing up kind of in orange, to be in some form of single family residential. The other piece that I wanted to identify is that in the map that you guys all worked on, we talked about reducing the depth of the mixed use, making it narrower, literally cutting it in half in some places and making it much narrower. I want to recognize the fact that almost everywhere that there is mixed use on the future land use map today is commercial. Today, it's commercial. So again, it would have fallen in the red because under the old commercial, the old code, commercial allowed for either commercial or multifamily, but we were trying to, in our long-range plans, account for the possibility of both in transportation and in sewer, as well as parks, a way to account for that possibility of higher density, higher intensity uses. And if it's all commercial, it has a lower intensity of use, and then it's hard to capture in your long-range plans. So we recognize the fact that the council had directed to narrow it up, but by this kind of color quirk here, we're recognizing that today it's commercial, and then only through a zone map amendment, again, does it make sense on the map? Does it make sense in the context and the other standards? Then through a zone map amendment, you could go to mixed use uses that were either commercial or multifamily or a combination thereof, especially if it's close to a signalized intersection.
So does anyone in council or any of the commissioners have an objection to what the staff is proposing?
So of the two maps, I would lean towards the second one.
This one?
Yeah, that one. My greatest hesitation is with the mixed use, especially up and down the highway and on Hayden Avenue, because those are already developed, mostly already developed properties, and I would like to see less mixed use in the city of Hayden.
So again, there's no way that you can get more mixed use in the city of Hayden unless it makes application for a zone map amendment and it meets the standards of approval. So this map is just a general viewpoint that based on the goals and policies that you've established, the location, should you wish to have a mixed-use piece of property, would be on those arterials, and that's what these are butted up against. So it follows that goal or policy, whatever it was. That's where it's located. So you don't want to see those on like a Maple or Reed or Miles. Your goal is pushing it toward your arterials, which are Hayden, 95, Lancaster, Prairie.
Yeah, so, yeah, I'm, like, again, I would not like to see it at all in that T shape on Hayden and the highway. Most of those areas are developed and they have homes on them.
They're not homes there. Those are probably commercial properties along the highway.
Part of them are. There's a couple of homes in there still, but
All those little cul-de-sacs are homes, all those little streets there are homes.
But they aren't in the mixed use, are they?
It's
They are,
good, it's
but
good, it's
they're-
good talking points, but we're looking at the map, not what might come down the road. What would come down the road again would come before,
This is what might come down the road. We're talking to you.
but not without council's approval, not without planning and zoning. In other words, just because the map is the color it is, doesn't mean that somebody has the right to come in and turn something into a use that is less desirable to you.
so then the question was, somebody asked the question what transitional is. So I think that Mike did a really good job when he talked about the fact that, you know, we're anticipating hopefully some direction from ITD, maybe later this summer, as far as what's going on with Hutter. We recognize that there most likely will be a road going through there of some kind, whether it's a full bypass or not. But we also recognize that as of today, there's like 3 property owners, plus or minus, that butt up against Hutter north of Lancaster. And so as they're potentially developing that area, they would have to come in with an annexation, a request to be annexed, number one. And that we, as the council and planning and zoning, would look at their request, especially council first, would look at it for a request to annex, and you would have some say as to what it is that you're kind of envisioning or they're envisioning, and then come forward accordingly. So those are all in annexation areas. That's really why it's very gray. We're having a hard time figuring out what that future looks like.
I must shoot.
And then down through this portion of town. Again, we just don't know what that looks like, but the properties on this side, council has seen most of those properties coming forward with applications, and so we kind of know what they're staying outside that setback area, and they're holding that per their annexation agreements today. Yes, Tom? Hold on.
I want to get back to what you were discussing earlier that Sandy was touching on. I was looking through this on my Google Maps, trying to find a good example that might be used as an application here. So I'm looking right now at the intersection of Miles and Camp Road, which, if I see it correctly, it's very hard to read the street names on these printouts here, but it looks like that's in what we call the mixed use
That's Camp Court.
Camp Court. Yes, Camp Court. So Camp Court north of Miles is all single-family residential and very small lots. If it falls into this mixed use, and going forward, we have these new form and zoning laws. What would happen to those homes there? And I'm not throwing this up as
Nothing
an
today.
accusation. I'm just trying to understand the process.
Nothing today.
So I think the difficulty comes is that you're all still looking at them as developments, as if a developer could swoop in and change
Right.
the zone.
Yes.
They're individual parcels owned by all different people. Every single one of those people would have to sell out. So you're really only looking at what happens if a single home owner decides to come in and apply for some sort of a mixed-use opportunity on a single parcel,
Right.
you have to get out of the mindset of looking at them as full developments, because they're not any
Well,
longer.
I'm not, I'm just, again, I'm.
So Donna, comment on if a current single-family residential parcel applies for a mixed-use project on their site, what's the likelihood of the site being eligible for a mixed-use project?
Probably not, because it's not
Exactly.
big enough.
They can't, it's not big enough. So that's why I'm saying, we're not talking swaths of land that are gonna be consumed.
No, I
Yeah.
understand, great, you're
Right.
kind of answering my
Okay,
question.
good.
So, now I'm thinking of another parcel of land, and this is just north of Hayden, you know, it's on the west side of 90, and it's like open grass. There's a lot of piles of dirt and down trees there.
Okay.
And be careful being lot specific. Keep going, but
okay.
examples, I know.
But there's single-family homes all around that.
Mhm.
What would happen in that case? I think that falls within this, the mixed use.
You would look at all of the standards of approval for a zone map amendment, and as the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council, you would look to see if they could meet all of the standards of approval for a zone map amendment. This is only one piece, this flume is one piece of the whole comprehensive plan. So, say they came in and requested a zone map amendment to whatever, then you would look at the goals and policies and say, does it meet the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan today for this request? And then you would look to see if it met the other standards of approval for a zone map amendment. And you'd make a finding that says, yes, it did, or no, it didn't, and why it didn't.
Okay. Sorry, one more question.
That's right. Keep asking.
So you talked about quirky lots that sort of fail to meet the zoning objectives, and there are lots of them on the east side of Government, north of
There are lots all over the city.
Miles. And right now, my perception is that developers are not interested in it because it's just too difficult to try to put up homes in there. So under this new idea of having just one
Land use type.
land use site, would that then make those an opportunity easier for those small quirky lots?
Only if they still met the goals and policies and/or the rest of the standards of approval.
Thanks for entertaining my questions.
Can we add some language in somewhere that the city will not initiate a citywide zone change based on the future land use map like we did in 21?
That would be up to the council to make that decision, whether they would want it to do that or
They're
not.
saying the city will not move ahead with these zone changes.
So this comprehensive plan amendment is not affecting any of your zone designations. So there would not be any reason for a city-initiated zone change because you're not affecting your current zoning.
Well, then why was it initiated?
But because you eliminated a zone and created a new one, and they had to go to something.
No, it was 1,700 properties that were being rezoned.
Yes, it's
and there was only
unfortunate, there was a notice sent to 1,700 properties. We've been through this a gazillion times.
Right, and I
It
don't
is
want
sig-
that to happen again.
It can't, and it won't, because you're not eliminating a zone in this comprehensive plan amendment.
Correct.
Okay, so
Okay, Matt's go. Sorry, he's been waiting patiently.
I'm gonna ask a generalized question, and maybe you can give me a generalized answer. Based on the
it's okay,
two
I'm just
maps
trying to get
we
through a
have
data
there,
point.
The digitized ones.
So these guys can move on.
The staff proposed one. Which map potentially will create more density in the city?
Neither.
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 So basically, they're equal, if you will, in that regard.
But,
Meaning, because we're talking about 3 different types of residential land uses versus going to one.
I'm not changing zones, these are land uses.
I get.
Okay, all right,
So-
all right.
So that's the question, is based on having 3 land uses for residential and going to one, it will have no effect on the density within the city.
Your future land use map doesn't affect your density, period. Your zone designations affect your density. Your zoning ordinances affect your density.
Okay,
Your
so-
future land use
Right,
map does
so,
not.
yeah, the land use map just kind of addresses the concerns related that the council has brought up, planning and zoning has brought up, and the public has commented on about where you want to see various types of land uses put.
One, looks to me, like the single use one leaves the door open though, okay? For down the road for someone to come in and select any of those. Okay, and the problem I'm having, yeah, I guess so. I want to see some definite reservation of residential suburban, okay? Not that somebody comes into an area and says, yeah, we want to use it for this, and there it goes, you got single, you got small or whatever, and you end up with no or 5 to 10 acre lots or anything like that, and before you know it, you know, all of the open space or larger lots are gone, because that broad, it's residential use.
That's a good point.
So someone's gonna come in and say, again, the smaller the lots and the more profit that can be made, and I get it, it's a business, and that's what it's all about, type of thing. But we're seeing it happen everywhere. People are wanting to build these cottages and stuff like that, and if we don't specifically say this certain area, and I would say, in my opinion, the county little island in there, whatever you want to call it, which is residential suburbanish right now, should be one. And I'd like to see the ACI area over there more specifically. What do you have over there? Agricultural, industrial, commercial, and what's the pink? Transitional, which could be anything, right? And again, my concern is that in a certain amount of time down the road, all the open space will be gone. And people always talk about it, well, we want to preserve open space. And it's not happening. And so I think I would like to see a more specific designation for creation or maintenance of open spaces.
Ed, is your concern kind of a not trust of future councils and commissioners?
No, it has nothing to do with trust of council. It has to do with development, looking at it and going, where can we build the most and make the most money? Okay?
And if
Where
I,
can we, go ahead.
I was gonna say, if I can add into that, with my 1.5 years on council, what I observe is that by the time it gets to planning and zoning and then to council, it's all teed up, all the T's are crossed, the I's are dotted. So if I understand Councilman Priest, what he's saying is that something that's currently undeveloped right now, if it then falls under this single residential zoning, then that could be quarter acre, could be eighth of an acre, could be something even more. And then that would drastically change the character of Hayden.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah, leaves the door open for anything, and if you look at what's going on all over the county, you're seeing densification, apartment, Target, I mean, right behind Target, 800 apartments, you go out Prairie, and you cross our border into Post Falls, and I was at the Post Falls comp plan meeting they had out there on Monday night a couple of weeks ago. And they're all, we need dense, we need dense, we need dense. Everybody's going that way, and developers,
So can we pause right there, Ed, just for a second? Because I think you guys, I'm sorry, but you're a little off track with, is your request to have a use on the future land use map preserved as residential suburban?
and or 5 or 10 acre lot, yeah, something.
It's not zoning, so we're not,
I need something, residential suburban's a good thing, preserve it, indicate that this area,
But
but just, where's the color swath for that?
This map is supposed to be an overview, like a 5,000-foot view. This is where we're gonna have residential. This is where we're gonna have commercial. This is where we're gonna have agricultural. And then your zoning map is what dials that in. And so all they're trying to do with the simplified one is say, this is the areas we want to be
But
residential.
it kind of just happened in Rathrum.
Right, but I think
Well, they took the
what
light-
Sean's
but
saying
that's
is,
the zoning. They changed the
Well,
zoning of that parcel.
They changed the zoning because on the future land use map, if I'm not
Did
mistaken.
it show residential there?
I'm pretty sure that's why they got it, I would think, that it should, and again,
But
this
don't we
future,
always argue that we want single-family homes in
We do
Canada,
want-
that's all we want, so is that a
But
bad
we-
thing they did there, or is that a good thing?
I'm not saying that what they did is
I
bad,
know.
what I'm saying is, and we've been talking about this for 4 years now that I've been involved with it, is some way to preserve more open, larger lots.
Larger lots, call it that.
Zoning, and I would
Larger
say,
lots.
my argument would be is that we have residential suburban, which I think is right now 1 acre minimums, is that correct?
Half
Half
acre.
acre, that's what I've changed to half acre use. But maybe we, in our zoning maps, we add, say, a 1/3 acre minimum size area where there's some, because we saw some of we did see a few developments that went to the half acre minimums because they didn't want to go through the process of trying to change a single family. And it was to the 8250. And that's what our zoning does for this. The future land use map says this is where we want residential.
Residential, yeah.
Well, I'm just concerned that it's gonna open the door, when you just give it a broad,
But it's a future land use map, it's not a zoning.
Well, and that's it.
well, but
And-
it opens the door for the zone change.
But you don't-
If somebody comes in and just says it's residential,
You guys don't
they come
like
in
it.
and say, I want to change the zone to whatever the, mixed use, mixed residential, mixed whatever, it opens that door for that zone change.
But the door's open anyways, and it goes back to Sandy's question earlier, which I think was a valid question, and we kind of cut her off a little because we weren't ready for it yet, is that you do run the risk of a takings claim. So if they meet all of the elements for the zone change and all the standards of review, which mind you, are established by you, so change the standards of approval if you want to make it more difficult, which is also in your code, not in your comprehensive plan, and not on your future land use map.
And can't you incentivize to do larger lots by saying you don't maybe have to put in all the curbs and gutters or swales?
Well, but that's all code, you're right, 100% code driven.
So isn't there things you can do to incentivize larger lots so that there's less cost to developers, so they're incentivized to put in larger lots?
That's one conversation we have to have, because that would apply to all these small quirky infill lots.
Right.
Don't takings usually occur when you downzone somebody and take?
Not necessarily. You have an obligation to tell them what the standards of approval are in your code, and it's their job to bring an application to you that meets it. If it doesn't meet it, you can say, you didn't meet these elements, we're not going to grant it. But you don't get to today, in your zoning code, say, you will forever be the zone you are today. I'm never gonna tell you what you can do ever to be a different zone. And that's what your future land use, that's what you're directed to do under the Local Land Use Planning Act, is to develop a plan with a future land use map, the use, that tells people what they could do with their land in the future.
So, to Ed's point, having a residential suburban, that kind of narrows it down a little bit more, and I think has a little bit more control.
But now you're making it a zoning map, not a future land use map.
But it's been on our future land.
I know it's created a lot of confusion as I'm seeing the conversation. It seems like we have a huge disconnect between zone and land use, and we've muddled them together. And so I think what staff's trying to do is
Land use map.
not exacerbate that.
You're,
Zone map.
You guys have to not talk over each other, because we have a record that's we picked up too.
so, if you want Hayden to stay exactly as it is today, and not densify anywhere on any lot, then you need to meet the state requirements for a moratorium. And you don't. So you're directed by Idaho code, under your comprehensive plan, to tell the people that own land in your city how they can develop in the future. It's, whether it's in your ordinances, but it starts with your comprehensive plan and then it goes to your ordinances.
So, let's just take an example, we say with the current one, with some residential suburban, and we get someone that wants to develop it in, to 4 units per acre, which is not residential suburban. They still can request that zone change. But if we maintain the future land use map as residential suburban, does that prevent them not to? Or
They could still make the request, but if they're not on the future land use map as anything other than residential suburban, it gives you a little more teeth.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
looking for, that's what I'm saying.
Which is,
That's what I agree with
but
Ed.
they, but they have, but you still have all of the other standards of approval for a zone change, which includes neighborhood context, which you guys included.
But open land doesn't have a neighborhood context.
It might, what if it's surrounded by housing development?
Like, I have 3 acres in Hayden.
Right.
You can't tell me just because you would prefer, if it doesn't, you know, if I apply and I go through this whole process just because, I mean, you don't have that right.
For what?
Tell me, like, that just because I don't want to see a certain thing, or I would like it suburban, I don't feel like, without doing it
What
properly.
surrounds your 3 acres?
Residential.
Okay, then you can probably do residential type thing. What?
Yeah,
I'm not-
that's,
I'm not saying
I'm,
deny
why,
that.
why not just keep it as residential then, and then I would at that time come and do my applications and go through all the processes, and it would be decided, but I should have the right to go through that
Oh,
process.
you do, I'm not,
Okay.
yeah.
Just fair enough.
So council, do we have enough information to make a decision on left or right? I don't want to hurry this, but I also don't want to keep going down rabbit holes. This is our data point. Staff's got a proposed simplification. There's the flum that we worked with as a group. What do you-
And I think Ed and Matt have supported the idea of a residential suburban designation. I think it would be helpful to know from everybody else whether or not you have a consensus on identifying a residential suburban use, which isn't a use technically.
Same bowl, different fruit.
Yes.
So every piece of property that's zoned residential suburban today, if it were going to create development that was smaller parcels than half-acre parcels, it would need to come through the process for a zone map amendment to a different, zone designation, like single-family residential or mixed residential, because those are zone designations. It would have to request that of the process, and you would have to see if that project, lot specific, would meet the standards of approval, all of them.
My opinion, knowing how confusing this can be, I understand the staff's desire to want to simplify things since this has nothing to do with the actual zoning. And understanding that and being able to explain that in a more understandable way by having a simplified future land use map. So I feel like the staff proposed applications makes more sense for this. That's my opinion.
And I think it more closely aligns with the guidance that we get from the state on how these future land use maps are supposed to look. It's not, you're not, so if you put residential suburban, that's a residential use, so now you're zoning your residential already in your future land use map. And I don't believe that's what the statutes, you're not, it's supposed to be, this is what we envision here as residential use, but it's not telling, the zone map is what then brings down where it goes to go.
Really just be
Yeah.
the devil's advocate on this. Why have a flum at all? Why don't we just go straight to the zoning map?
Because the local land use act requires it.
Yeah, okay, these are state requirements, these are, we may not necessarily agree with them or like them, but that's how they have directed us to produce these comprehensive.
It's how the local land use act has directed you to convert your comprehensive plan to something visual.
Is this something new? Because for the current future land use map has designations.
Yep.
No, I'm just saying you have to have a
Huh?
future
It
land use.
has land uses,
Oh, is residential suburban a land use?
can be.
Well, what I'm saying is I see that on the future land use map. I see mixed use on the land use map. I see all of these zoning things instead of, why hasn't it been a broad
So the land, that
simplification up until now?
Because the last attempt at your comprehensive plan was to align the language and to make it easier to understand, and it created more confusion than it did alignment. So for instance, other cities have their zone designations that look just like yours, but their future land use maps say context area 1, context area 2. They're not called anything at all the same as your zoning designations. And context area 1 can include commercial or multi-use. It may have a variety of options in it. You guys tried in this last round to simplify, ironically, and it created more confusion. So you're reverting back to something simpler to try to eliminate the confusion while using some of the same language, but not all of it.
And where's the confusion at our development department or at the developers?
No, it seems to be confusion in your in your community, not, the developers aren't confused at all. They understand the difference between a land use map and a,
No, my question is
Oh.
regarding, I'm sorry, the land use map that we currently have where it says residential suburban, you said that's creating confusion.
Oh.
Where's the confusion occurring?
what's been coming into us is the confusion's coming from people believing that the land use map is a zone map because it uses the same language as your zone map.
Would it be beneficial to adopt or to get rid of this zoning language on this map?
I think this simplification attempt does that because you're not breaking down all your residential. You're not breaking down all of your commercial or your industrial. So I think this map gets you there, but.
So currently, if a developer comes in and looks at the future land use map and sees that, oh, that's residential suburban is what the future map says, and I want to do something more dense, they can apply for a zone change, but in that case, couldn't it maybe be a deterrent for developers saying, I don't want to do it there because the future land map. In other words, he has the ability to change the zone with an application.
They also-
But could
They
this be a
also have the
deterrent?
ability to change a comprehensive plan map.
So, and
with
you've
the state
seen that. You've seen a
process.
comprehensive plan map amendment come simultaneous with a zone map amendment because what they want to convert to isn't, what's the word I'm looking for? Compatible on the land use map. So,
And please, Donna,
but it is on,
Donna, correct me if I'm wrong, the developer's still gonna have to look at the zone map. They're not just gonna look at that map and
Right.
say, I have a free pass here. They still have to look at the zone map. And so there's where the hurdle is, not
I
that
think the
map.
bigger confusion is not your big developer, the big developers know what's going on. I think the bigger confusion is new property owners that are buying property look at the maps and believe that the future land use map is the zone that they bought. So they believe that they've bought property that has already been zoned, whatever is on the future land use map. And so we're constantly doing that, no, that's a future use, and you bought a piece of property that is zoned this, zoned X, but you believe you got it zoned Y.
Donna, to add to that, I'd also say new city council members and new planning and zoning commissioners. This confusion, if you will, makes it harder for people to understand how it is.
But those landowners who you say, look at it, think the future land use map shows the potential. They look at it and they, here's my property, and it could end up being, because that's what the future land use map says. And so I think that's where a lot of I think in the here, to some degree, the fear. They go, wait a minute, I'm right here, and in the future, it says here that if they meet all the other standards, that the map says they can build an apartment building right behind my house.
It still has to go through the zoning.
Still
map,
has
And
to
it-
go through.
yeah.
may or may not meet all of the,
Well, we're talking about
Design
what
standards.
the community is seeing, and someone looks at it and says, wait a minute, this map says if these people apply and meet the whatever, there could be an apartment building right behind my house.
that's where the
And that's where
confusion.
the fear comes in with the people looking at it going, you know, we want to, if I were to be looking for property to buy a house or whatever, I would want to do my due diligence and come in and look at, and say, if I buy this here, what's the potential that down the road I'm going to be surrounded by something I don't want to be surrounded by? And then make a decision, you know, based on that type of information.
Sandy, you have something to add?
Yeah, so I just want to remind everybody, we're playing with private property rights here. And, you know, what Councilmember DePriest just said is valid. people need to do their due diligence and look at these things. But if they've done their due diligence and they've bought their properties and now we come in and change things, that's not fair, and that's not protecting private property rights. Now, this thing that happened, 4 years ago, this sentence here says, as a part of this process, it was identified that several properties in the city could change zones to better conform with the future land use map. And it was a large-scale change, which, we were told during the process, oh, you can still live there, but you might not be able to fix up your house. So changing zones out from under people. And I know that's not what we're saying we're doing here, but do we have something in place that will stop the city from doing a citywide zone change? And then also, like I said earlier, of the two maps, I prefer the second one, but I don't approve of the mixed use on the right side of Hayden and down the highway, because that's mostly already developed, single-family homes.
So the only thing I would add to that is the city is you. So you would be initiating a zone change if that were going to happen, not staff. So that's not happening here. That would be city council, and there is nothing, and Sandy said it, there's nothing in this process that is going to trigger any changes to anybody's zone, anywhere.
Has council heard enough? Do we need to do like a raise hand vote so we can get to the next data point?
This is the, are we in favor of a more generalized land use designations? So we're kind of picking between the two maps.
So raise your hand, who is?
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, I just double check here.
Yeah.
Before we do this. So what I'm hearing, the arguments made by Commissioner Taylor, I hear you, and that we have to adhere to state statute. I understand. That's why we have a plan. And then I also hear we have a zoning map.
Yes.
So, to summarize, the FLUM is just a general 60,000-foot view of, okay, this is where we want to see the city grow types of developments. Then, on top of that, that drives a zoning map, which is much more granular and breaks it up. And that's the one that all the developers will really pay attention to
That's the law.
when they go to develop a piece of land. And so, for example, Councilman DePriest is raised a valid concern about undeveloped land that falls within this new residential, and whether or not that would open up the flexibility for either, half-acre lots down to 1/8 acre lots. But the zoning map will determine what can go where within that residential zone.
Without a zone map amendment, yes.
Without a zone map amendment.
And just on the side, just as you guys rely on the Public Safety Commission to help you with things, we have our planning and zoning commissioners. This is all these guys do, so I'm not just saying, obviously blindly follow them, but that's all this is the dirt they chew. So, and thank you for being here tonight.
I do remember when an applicant came in and they used part of their argument to get approval, is they're saying, well, this goes in line with your future land use map. And so it does have an effect on perhaps the decision by the council, because that adds, I think, more support to approve or disapprove a project. And so I'm just saying that I've heard that it didn't seem to be a misunderstanding about the future land use map, because it's been used many times in applicants.
I think one of the things that we're also, I think that Mike did a really good job bringing up, is the fact that the future land use map is born from your goals and policies. And so if you're in a residential, generalized residential, or if you're in one of the other ones, mixed use, whatever, light industrial, whatever zone you're in, and you're proposing a zone map amendment that's in conformance with the future land use map, really pushes you back to the goals and policies. But that standard specifically says that you're in conformance with the goals and policies of the future land and of the comprehensive plan. And so they can't just come to it and say, well, we checked the box, we're on the flume. They have to say, we're in conformance with these goals or these policies of your comprehensive plan. It pushes them back to what you guys had developed. That's what we're hoping anyway.
But currently, we have goals and policies that support residential suburban land use, correct? Or we wouldn't have it.
Right, I mean, it is a zone designation type of single-family residential, you're correct. And so, yes, you have goals and policies that support that.
Is there a goal or policy that basically addresses the desire for the populace to preserve open space?
There is.
Just one more data point from my fellow councilman is that we have discussed that we would want to prioritize infill development versus annexation. So I'm thinking about those quirky lots that Donna talked about, and right now they're kind of like, they're missed opportunities. And I'm not saying that I'm advocating for some kind of like super densification in those areas, but as we go through this, I'm hoping that we'll explore ways in which we can ease up the, maybe, I don't know, the infrastructure requirements in those areas in order to see that homes put there. And they have to be developed within the neighboring context, so I think that this single residential designation for the future land use map would allow that opportunity, whereas if we had distinct zones, we may not be able to. That's, I'm thinking out loud, and
I would also argue that same kind of opposite side of that coin is if you start to put in more specific zone uses in there, say somebody annexes into the city and it's in an area where there's currently large lots, and council would like to see that be residential suburban with larger lots, but it's in just a R1 zone because there's residential suburban on the map shown. They may be able to argue that, well, you can't give me a residential suburban zoning here because it's here on your map. So by making it more general, it gives you more flexibility for the larger parcels that come in, that get annexed into the city, to put in more appropriate zoning for what you feel the goals and policies of the comp plan are. Preserve open space. Yeah, you can annex in, but we're gonna make, you've got to be residential suburban, you're gonna be half acre lots. Whereas if it's called out on the map already, you might not have that flexibility to do that with them. And that's why this is that overview, and then we get into the zoning side of it, the policies and the statutes.
So the question for the consultant, then, if we eliminate residential suburban as a land use, we will eliminate the goals and policies that support that in a comp plan, is that true?
You guys have narrowed down your goals and policies to 9, I think, goals and 17 policies. So they are limited, and they are narrowed down and grouped to that.
I know, but we have to have, you said, goals and policies to support residential suburban. Will that continue, or will you eliminate it?
It'll continue.
You can have goals and policies that continue to support residential suburban concept without having it as a designation on your future land use map.
It is.
And it would be things like maintain a certain number of larger lot sizes within the city on the exterior boundaries as a buffer. That, I mean, I'm just making that up on the fly, but you can have goals and policies that support the maintenance of residential suburban as a concept without having it as an actual designation on your future land use map.
I think to address Councilmember Schaefer's here, specific to the infill, I think it's most likely that on these quirky-ish lots that just off the top of my head, I'm going to guess the majority of them are not really large lots. And the chances are that they're going to be some form of regular residentialist type thing. a couple houses here, you see it, somebody has 2 acres or whatever it is, and they'll stay with the 8250 or whatever it is designation, so it will fit the context of these neighborhoods. Again, I'm most concerned about the island that is now county and what is in our current ACI just west of Butter, what happens to that. And I think that land is currently basically ruralish, suburban agriculture. And you look just south of it, you have Brickert and Big Sky, which are beautiful lots, estates, if you want to call them that, that are, I think there's a market for it. A lot of people coming up here, they want their ranch or whatever, mini ranch or whatever they can do with that. And I really think we need a way to protect that area so that it kind of it's an extension of Brickert and Big Sky and
So
still maintains a rural potential.
It is important that a good portion of that is part of the airport runway protection zone, so a portion of it, I think.
Is limited on what
Is
can
limited on what can be built there. So, it is important to note that piece as well.
Yeah, yeah. That's the infill stuff, I'm not worried that it's gonna, people are coming and pound stuff in. I'm more concerned that the limited amount of openish space that the city still has.
Larger track lots.
Okay, larger track. the
Open
potential
space
larger-
has a different meaning.
The potential larger track lots.
There you go.
Will disappear.
That's a great point. Thanks for that rebuttal. Is there some kind of,
Well, Sandy's the only one that I feel like has made herself clear. The other 3 of you, unless you just don't want to commit here.
Mr. Mayor, arguably, it's really a tough decision to make. I wish there was an easy solution for all these concerns.
Could we have a little more time on this, like a work session, before we make this decision?
I don't think I'm gonna change my position over time here, because this has been my concern it's what got me on this.
So we brought,
on this situation.
we brought pens with us. I think
And we got
everybody's got some
large
markers
maps too.
out there, and we've got some 11 by 17s. If you guys would like to draft on your markers and on your, what have you.
This is the one that represents the staff recommendation.
Whatever the second one is. I don't have it in front of me.
Big versions here if you need more.
And they're a big, yeah. And then we could take those back and draft them if you want to have one more meeting after a city council meeting or before.
This is my AI platform, so I said. what if
Tom,
people in city conference-
I'm thinking out loud, you're going to be gone for a month. And Donna, the timeline to get this through public hearing is August?
Yeah, it'll be in August.
So you wouldn't be here for another workshop unless we kept, we're going on, August marks, I think, 2 years from the origin of this thing.
Nobody's getting
It's not
forced
that I wanna rush
anywhere.
things.
I understand, but is there some way we can, I mean,
Here's my,
Councilman Dupree's things are great points.
yes and no. I still think you guys are muddling land use and zone, and at the end of the day, whatever we do here,
They need to be able to work.
can
Thank
fix
you.
later. It's not, this is not permanent. Yes, it's a little painful to fix it, but it's not concrete. Every
The land
comp
app,
plan
it's
is everyone's best effort at the
$479,
time.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Hart is north of Baker.
No, it's south, so that's hard.
Bakel or Bokel?
Version 1. Take your pick.
So Donna, what's the point for clarity since we're recording? What's the point of marking up maps?
We want them to mark up drafts that they're kind of talking about. Ed talked about some changes over here he wants to see made.
Half acre.
To the flum itself,
To the flum itself. And then
of
if
which,
we are
of
going to
which
have
all
a,
of council and all of planning and zoning will have to
right, then we
agree
would
with.
bring it back.
Right.
Should they want to bring it back for a follow-up at a
I thought it was an acre, but it was half acre.
next date.
I'd be happy, to be honest with you. These are 5, 10, these are down here. I'd be happy to have been in there, just, okay, this is basically gonna be residential services. It's gonna be residential, it's gonna be residential suburban.
We don't want really changes to the map, do we?
That's the best we can do.
I think it's,
I guess my
part of this is asking.
push a developer to ask, buy this and then try and get.
Would you guys be interested in
Our area of impact, and they do that.
looking at the big maps together?
Get the annex from our area.
How do they do that? They have some process.
Have to remember what's getting developed.
Would you want to show those on the big map so that we could kind of put it together and others could see what you're proposing?
Hey, Donna, I don't know how many more decision points we need. Can we work on this and go through the rest of this? If this is the only thing we're hung up on, then we can leave with at least a plan, as opposed to spending 2 hours on this one data point and there's 17 more to go through, or whatever the number is.
There's just 3 more, and we could just I could kind of go over them while you guys are marking on the maps, and then
I would prefer that if
And
council's
then-
okay with that.
get a consensus at the end
Yep.
for what we're gonna do.
And then we'll
We got
circle back.
stickies maybe
Yeah.
more than writing, we have like the little post-it notes anywhere?
Yeah, we can get some.
Yeah, that'd probably be easier than making a mess with the pen.
Listen to Mike.
So what we're gonna be considering, there's 4 considerations. The one is, are we in favor of more generalized land use designations, or the one that the council kind of adopted? And then what general types of development do we want to occur and where? And that's what kind of the marking up of the map is. So you guys can go ahead and form groups of that. And are the transition zones, the transitions between the zones well-defined? Do you like where the lines are kind of drawn? And do the proposed flume designations adequately reflect our vision for future growth and land use diversity across Hayden's neighborhoods? So basically, kind of drawing on the map, where the lines are, what you guys are thinking, and then coming up with a consensus on which ones you want to move forward. So if everyone can gather around on the map and kind of get a marker, and,
Should we get some post-its probably?
yeah, some Post-its too.
Grabbing some Post-its. And just, so this one over here on this side is the version 1, so this is the digitized version of the one we got from you guys, and this is the staff, the simplified one
Yeah.
over here.
So I have a question about mixed use. So is the mixed use designation, is that a zone? Because like residential, you've got different types of residential mixed in, so.
So mixed use, I believe, is currently a zone.
It's currently also a zone.
Yeah, it's both.
But it would be a mix of commercial and residential, correct?
Yeah, so the use is a mix of commercial and residential. The zone is mixed
that?
use with clearly defined rules regarding the zone.
You gotta pee or whatever.
Call it
CR or something?
mixed, just put commercial, put commercial / residential and make it green.
Literally.
And it's literally the same thing. And don't call it mixed use.
Do you guys like that?
Yeah, just call it commercial, the whole purpose of the mixed use, Art, shush. The whole purpose of the mixed use designation on the future land use map is saying that it has components of commercial and residential. So on the map, you can call it commercial / residential, but you're gonna have a zone, Art, stop shaking your head at me. But you're gonna have a zone that is called mixed use with clearly defined design standards and setbacks and all the things you usually see with mixed use. Density, because density doesn't, Art's been right on this from minute 1. Density doesn't belong in your land use, right? So that's why you're identifying the uses on the future land use map. The rules regarding the zone in your zoning designations. So,
So what's the main difference between the commercial zone, you know, the dark blue,
yeah, new commercial use,
and,
Use.
and mixed?
commercial use. So commercial use is commercial only. Mixed use can be residential or commercial,
Residential.
or a blend of both.
Yeah.
Right.
Does that help?
And your design standards require that when it's developed, if it's close to a intersection, controlled intersection, it has to have both commercial And both.
Or on a
If you're
main street,
proposing residential multifamily and you're close to a signal, it has to have a commercial component
Component.
as well.
Right.
Close to a signal.
Well, it's all in your
It's all
zoning
in your
code, so
zoning
it's
code.
really not applicable to this,
Right.
but. I mean, it's a question that can be answered, it's just not.
Is it clearer if we call it something other than mixed use?
I'd call it residential/commercial, or commercial/residential.
I
Yep.
think that helps.
Yep,
Yes.
yep,
Because it can have one or both of those uses,
correct.
or a combination of both of those uses.
And it'll direct people to the actual zoning map.
Right.
Instead of thinking that.
That's their
Yep.
zone,
this is the
exactly.
end
I
all
would
be
agree
all.
with you.
Yes.
Yep.
That should help clear up some of the confusion.
I like that.
Why did you put both ag and residential?
Either or.
Why not just leave it at?
Because I think in reality, we have to
Cracks me up.
provide some form of residential, I mean, and it's already, you can see it coming from
This
over here.
this isn't in the city, and that's not.
Right.
Clear as mud.
So,
Chance of the future.
Annexation.
If they ask for annexation,
It's in the impact.
right, if we allow that,
then
then
we say, here's your choices. That's a chance we have to
keep it down.
When they come in, we say, okay, if you want to come
Our
in.
interesting thing, you didn't define
Did you guys
transition.
catch that?
I mean, it's not in your,
Yeah.
you've got it designated on the future land use map, but you never define what transition is.
Mixed use is that.
It's something new, that's why we're discussing
No,
it here.
no, I'm saying.
Yeah, it's a good catch, but we're not,
No, no, I'm,
this chapter is under development.
yeah, I know,
This chapter's under
but this is your recommendation.
Mixed use on the.
Yes, but Don suggested change.
So it still needs to be.
Definition.
We will, that's what we're working
But
on.
we're just.
That's tonight we're working on.
But it's not land use.
Yeah.
So we see it on the map right here. So-
Guys, we have many conversations going on at once. This is a city council meeting with planning and zoning. Let's all please.
They need to be able to do their work.
Yes.
So let's, say we change it to whatever, we said it was
Residential/commercial.
either one, residential slash, okay? So if that is on there as mixed, and it's only in these areas, okay? But let's say over here we have a broad, just residential. Would that eliminate the ability for them to put commercial slash mixed residential because it's here on the map, but it's not here?
Right, so if it was, I mean, if you're saying that it's gonna be residential, like in that rectangle over
In
there.
that case, and they have
Yes.
to come in for a zone change and tell us why they think it's appropriate in that zone, but it's not in the future land use map. They would have to meet all the other requirements. Like perhaps maybe Hutter goes in and they put a exit ramp right there, like, hey, this is a great spot for a gas station.
Well,
Well, that's
But that's a bad-
commercial.
Yeah.
Look, everybody knows me, okay, and knows where I'm coming from, so it's no secret here. And they say, oh, you gotta be careful what you say, because, okay, I follow the law, the statutes, when it comes in, if people, I have to follow what is what. And that's why I say words are very important here. And this is very important, because as Matt said earlier, I've seen applicants use the future land use map to justify persuade, good word, yeah, I had another one that I didn't want to say, persuade that that's an element that, because of it, you have to approve, okay? So my concern is, I think this is a mile or so, if not more, of potential mixed use. I think or commercial slash commercial. I think we're leaving a lot of places for potential, and along here, and that it's very concerning to me that in addition to all this, that people may say, well, heck, it's residential, well, we should be able to put it here too. I think,
Can you not use, tell us what, put what? You said it.
commercial slash residential, okay? Because I think that's the thing that I hear, besides the open space, and people just say that outside their mouth because when you try to pass a bond or whatever it is, that they say, no, we don't want to pay to do it. Well, folks, here's your choice, okay, but still. The next one is the residential slash commercial facilitates the density, okay? And I think we owe it to our constituents okay, to manage that potential facilitation of density more than anything else that we do on this.
Time out. Density is controlled by your zoning code only. You created the confusion in your last comprehensive plan by identifying uses and including in the definition density language. You're gonna remove that. Your zoning code drives your density, period. Nothing on your land use map drives your density.
Except what is the density allowance on commercial / residential?
Nothing. It's just a use.
It's a
It's just a use
We're still-
When
definition.
they come in and say, we want to put this here, we say
They
you
look at
can't
the
have more than
zoning,
12
they
units.
look at the zoning map, and the zoning map tells them what their density allowance is. Nothing on the future land use map, I'll say it again, dictates or drives density. That's where the language barrier has become problematic.
And that's why we say change it to commercial residential, so it doesn't even.
That's just a use.
I would take out the mixed residential too, just make it.
Well, and that's, yeah, and that's the.
That they did on that, yeah. And then maybe this is gonna help you guys help educate the public
Yeah.
when you're out there, because it's the use that is critical. It can be commercial use, it can be a residential use, that's it on your future land use map. That's it. Zoning code, your zones drive your density.
Yep, so we're not saying that it's
So this would be
low
on
density
here?
residential.
So that would be applying to.
Yeah, so
Right.
that would apply, this.
And I can show exactly where that
language
can
would
be,
apply to the
because
mixed
I
use
pinned
areas
it down.
on the maps here. And that would say, you know, I think another good point there is it's not saying, it's saying that it leaves the potential open for either commercial, residential, or both. Right?
Yes.
So let's take a hypothetical where we have this area of impact where if we left this as ag only, and then the owner applied to the city to be annexed, but they wanted to turn it into residential, this future land use map, even though it designates it as agriculture, has no bearing on whether, but we could, because when you annex, you have to put it into a zone.
Correct.
So if we said, our future land use map says ag, and that's the only way we would ever annex in, but they want to develop it, we're okay, we're not taking.
Right.
Say that
Correct.
one more time, please.
Okay, let's just take this area of impact, and it's designated future land for use for being agriculture. We recognize that. And so then at some point in time, they apply, the developer or owner applies to be annexed, which we can approve or not. But we also, if we are to approve them, they also have to have a zone designation when they're annexed.
Yes.
So, and my question was, well, if they ask to be annexed and they want to be residential, but its land use is ag, and we said, no way, it's not gonna be residential, that's not a private property issue. We're protected, we're okay.
You can say, we'll annex you, but your annexing is ag.
Right, so so having that designation there as ag, is a good thing in my mind.
I think, the reason I put two of them down there is, and it was kind of touched on earlier, that if you limit it to ag only, and you don't get I think residential suburban gives the opportunity for resident, that you will have them attempting to go to the process to annex into Post Falls. And then Post Falls, will, yeah, that's on our border, building apartments
But
there.
we've already agreed to these areas of
I
impact.
asked Donna the same questions, if they can de-annex out of our area of city impact. But it's a process.
Yes.
That they would probably, if they couldn't get in, that they would probably go
You have
through.
to undesignate.
That's new.
Did you guys look at this version of the, because that takes that, it designates a little bit more than ag,
Well,
to ag and some industrial. I mean, that, because this version leaves that whole area as that transition zone, whereas this one provides a little bit more direction while still leaving some transition. None of it's actually residential on this map. It's industrial, transition, and commercial.
Is there a benefit to converting that?
Oh, I know, but that's what Ed put down here, and Is transition a land use?
In this case, it is because of the uncertainty around that.
Is there a benefit to switching that southwest block that is now designated as agriculture and considering that residential?
We definitely could. I don't know if that, what do you guys think about that?
If we want to, not use the word persuade, but if our vision for that area of something that would get annexed in, if we would like to see that as larger residential lots, if we envision that as opposed to, you know, commercial, would it be better to plant that as residential right now?
Where it's ag right now.
Where it's ag right now, because ag leaves it up to the future developer more so than.
Or it leaves it up to when they annex in, they have to go for a zone.
Well, and that's what,
Leave it up to council
Right.
to decide that.
But my point being, if we already, not hinting at, but if we already suggest that we want that use to be residential, the same way that to go flow with like the Big Sky area.
Yeah.
Would it be best to consider that residential instead of agriculture?
Well, I would say if your goal was to encourage bigger lots there, then you can, when they ask to be annexed in, you wouldn't be hurt as bad to say, well, we want you to be suburban instead of 8250.
right.
Yeah. Got it.
So I think it'd be
So
better.
leave it ag,
Yeah.
because it's.
Do we have a rural land use? That's kind of what Big Sky.
Yeah, maybe that's what you
They're
call it.
rural.
That might be
That's your
another-
5,
Yeah,
10,
so
20
instead
acre
of,
lots.
yeah, instead of agriculture,
Rural,
agriculture.
yeah.
Call it rural.
Yeah,
Because there's a lot of people out there.
So
are
that
2 acre
sounds
lots
good.
that might be like,
to
well,
consider that rural instead of agriculture.
Yeah.
But if they're,
Don't have to have.
if they're within the city, they're gonna have to hook up to sewer.
Not if they're 5
Not in
acres.
that.
Not if they're 5 acres.
But I thought there was an ordinance that if you are in the city, you have to hook up. Exception is if you have the 5 acres and you, okay, got it.
Council, I want to ask a question. We're here to look at the comprehensive plan red lines. Putting the future land use map aside, is it going to be a better idea for you guys? My fear is we've got a lot of individual people putting notes on a map and not having a consensus. Perhaps in July, we have another workshop where we only talk about the map and we get all this stuff worked out so that we can get through the red line drawings tonight. Because this is chaos. There's no solidified output here. There's their ideas, your ideas, everybody's sticking their ideas on here, and the way this is, the way this is supposed to work is through consensus, not through, I have an idea for this little piece of land.
So that everybody gets to look at the ideas and come to a consensus.
I'm asking the question, I'm not making an accusation. I'm just simply saying, should we get through, it's almost 7 o'clock and we're at like decision point 1 still here. Should we get through the rest of this and then have a second workshop where you guys come to a consensus over what you want the future land use map?
I would like more time on this.
Well, I think we need more time anyways, because you have to make the adjustments to the language.
Yeah.
But I think we're coming to a consensus on what
But I'm
edits
not-
we would like
I'm
to
not
see.
happy with this, though. I'm thinking more
Staff, can we support that?
commercial here.
Yeah, we need this input in order to get to the next step for them. So this is good work product so far.
It is important, absolutely, but man, we could be here till 12 o'clock.
Well, just
It's the maps that always get everybody.
get a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
I hear you.
I'll make you one if you want one.
Saying This is the first time any of us have seen this, so
Okay,
we
That's
should
fair.
have expected this level.
that's fair.
Well, and I don't think we have additional red lines to, I mean, I think we were open to comments if people had
Right.
comments, but really
We're
we
not
are
going
looking.
through any red lines.
Well, let's go through those and then maybe at the end of that, we could come back
You
and
just said they're
say,
not going through any red lines.
oh, we're not.
But it did take comments,
We
because
would
I
take
have some
comments.
comments.
Well, we've got, yeah, that's a point. They've got comments, so
We could take any of the comments.
let's look at that and then we'll circle back and say, is this something we resolve tonight? Or it sounds like you're saying you need time
I need time.
to think on this and to update maps.
Some of the conversation that we got going tonight about changing some of the language, I think was helpful.
Sure.
That'll help update the land use chapter. So I think what we started doing here is really helpful.
Yeah.
Okay.
As far as the language is concerned, and then another workshop will be needed to narrow down the map. But now we'll dive into any red line comments that you have.
That are not in the land use chapter, correct?
That's
'Cause
right.
That's not been updated.
So point us where you want us to be looking.
Yeah.
I didn't bring, we were just gonna take comments on the red line. Are we prepared to discuss line for line with the red lines with you? My understanding, it was just mainly just gonna be the land use map with taking comments about the red lines. If you had any specific things you want us to change or look at.
I'd like to comment that there was no memo given to us. So I didn't come prepared for that.
I did.
I thought we were going
Talk
to
about
go page by page.
Okay, I wasn't,
Yeah, no, I think the intent was we provided you with the draft, and then if you had comments or things that you specifically wanted to discuss, we would be able to take some time tonight to do that. Otherwise, our plan was to look at the future land use map.
I think we're suffering from maybe too long between meetings, because last meeting, that was exactly the guidance that was given, was look at this draft document, give us your comments on the next meeting, which is tonight.
Well,
I mean,
I'm gonna
do we have
start.
one to pull up?
All right,
on the draft, relate to the draft,
So there's, and just for clarity, there's two different drafts, one with red draft, one with green draft.
I'm going up.
Should we be focusing on one? This is the red line. Okay, got it. The one with green on it?
With green,
Okay.
And the green one has the red
I'm
line.
gonna start off with page 22, which is chapter 4, land use. Okay? Well, this is all about.
Yeah.
Future land use types, just the language, and again, it's gonna be mixed use, says, mixed use areas allow for both residential, multifamily, 3 or 4 units per structure, and commercial land use types, creating a flexible environment for development with fewer restrictions. I think that on each of those, should be added the maximum densities. Like
Okay,
mixed-
pause, Ed. That whole that whole table's going away.
Right.
That,
What's it doing in here?
because this hasn't been changed
We had
yet.
to have this meeting.
You have to finish that map so that that table can match that map. That's the whole point. So then,
Why did we get this? What's this
Because we
all
needed to
about?
go through the rest of the comprehensive plan red lines.
other than the land use chapter, because the land use chapter is driven by what happens with this map. So you're correct, that whole table is going to 100% change.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so I can't talk about the language in the nodes.
Sure.
I can't.
Yeah, go
Okay,
ahead.
on page 23, when it talks about neighborhoods and overlay zones. New development of nodes, I would prefer to see primarily new development west of 95. I've had conversation with people who are east of 95 in the well-developed neighborhoods who, I haven't had one person say, oh yeah, it'd be nice to turn that corner into a liquor store, mini mart, blah, 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 blah. You know, because those are a lot of established old homes type of things. And I said, if we're gonna do those things, then maybe more along, you know, Lancaster, if and when they start developing that, or out into the, around
So,
some of the,
I'm
what
gonna
ends up
play-
being commercial / residential.
I'm gonna play devil's advocate just really briefly, okay? So, there is a neighborhood node today that exists east of Government Way. So when that subdivision came forward and wanted to put a neighborhood node in that location, based on what you've just said, it was established neighborhood location, and they built a neighborhood node on the corner in that area. So you would be saying that they wouldn't be allowed to build there based on that.
What corner?
We're not designating, not talking about where.
Was it there currently?
It is.
Why can't we talk about it? is already there.
Because the hard part about these conversations is when you're creating a record of talking about specific locations, when what you really should be doing is focusing on your overall 30,000-foot view.
Right.
An example of what we're looking at.
So are you?
So the-
Well, maybe talk about whether or not you even want the concept of neighborhood nodes.
I just said, I don't have a problem with them in new development, primarily in the open areas, which doesn't have existing neighborhoods in them.
Does the rest of the people around the table agree with that?
I would agree with Council.
Yeah, I'll go for that.
Note
Well,
taken.
No.
Okay.
Okay,
I would say no, because like one of the cool things about, I say East 95 is you've got those little pockets like Porch and, where.
That's in Hayden Lake.
That's in Hayden Lake, I know, but it's pretty close to Hayden and it's a cooler spot. Like where the stupid cow is probably another neighborhood, I would say. What else is out there that would classify as that? And those are the only two I can think of that are east of 95, but it makes it more walkable and people go in their golf carts and people hit Porch.
It's a lower node.
Yeah.
So is
That's
your,
an Hayden
is your
Lake.
proposal, because the node concept, that's something we want to keep in the plan.
Yeah, I'm not
But you're just saying the locations, because there is a node map in the plan. So is that what you're proposing changing?
Well, that's just my individual comment, and now, if all the others say, hey, Ed, okay.
So you want all the neighborhood nodes to be west of 95?
I would primarily say, yeah. You
I
know,
wouldn't take it
Because
out
my
though, because
constituents
when I get the
on
flexibility.
west of 95 would say the
Do you
opposite.
guys have the?
what was that?
I'm just curious at the
It's a
maps
little-
and the.
She's supposed to be
Placemaking.
east of 95.
Oh,
But I think, you know, on west of
You
95.
made a great point. I think it comes down to
There's an appendix map that has the nodes listed
a level of severity,
in the appendix.
because I couldn't imagine.
We don't have the maps at the end.
Oh, okay.
Intersection east of
But I don't
95,
think that was in neighborhood.
but a stupid cow, yeah, because it kind of fits that context of that area right now.
I don't know, can't get to whatever's there.
and with the outer process. I think instead of, on the node map, it says here,
Mixed-use neighborhoods.
here, and here, whereas getting to the context of the neighborhood, if you've got a neighborhood that's in this case, probably redevelopment type of thing, and it fits in, but it's not on, you look on the map, and say, no, that's not where the neighborhood node's supposed to be. I think it's on an individual basis, shall we say, again, does whatever it is fit within what's happening.
Council.
Yeah, and it's up to council to then say, yeah, instead of looking at it and go, well, the nodes are here, 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 and here, and that's not here, but it fits.
Spaces in the city.
So,
The way the code reads for nodes is that it requires a special use permit. So it has a process that it has to follow in order to allow for a node to exist.
It's not tied to the future node map.
It is today, but if you wanted to remove it being tied to that, then
Well,
we could address that.
And on a case-by-case basis, if it fit the context of whatever was happening in that particular area, then sure. And if P and Z council then wanted to say, yeah, that works, then fine. I just don't, be tied to the map saying, okay, here's where we're gonna have them, might not really work out. So on page 24, Central Business District overlay, and again, it gets down to words end up in court. And they say, well, here's what it says, and I feel very uncomfortable, where it says mixed-use development will continue to be encouraged. So if you go right out here and get on Government Way, probably an hour ago, if we start putting a bunch of mixed use along Government Way, or not mixed use, commercial, relatively higher intensity, residential, the traffic on Government Way is going to be ridiculous. So I struggle with encouraging mixed use on Government Way here in the Central Business District.
But what if you had commercial with residential above and you could walk all the stuff downtown? And then they're not driving.
How, I see what you're saying, but how long has that vision been for government way that it developed into a walkable residential? It's been quite a while, and what are we seeing? Are we seeing any walkable development?
Well, it's all developing as commercial.
Are we seeing any residential one? So that's kind of, and again, it's just me, I don't like the term encouraging mixed use, because to me, mixed use means a lot of people and a lot of traffic. Okay, moving on to page 29.
How do other folks feel about
Yeah, okay.
that part of it?
Where is it?
The mixed-use development, the CBD will continue to be encouraged.
Strike the word encourage.
That's the.
Yeah, the word encourages, because, you know, again, you get somebody comes in and says, look, Your Honor, they're saying they encourage it, now they're saying we
Let's
can't
say,
do
well,
it.
it'll be allowed, or instead of encouraged.
I don't mean, mixed-use development will continue to be encouraged and designed. I'd strike the whole sentence starting with mixed use. Any more discussion on that one?
Follow the goal. I think we might want to go back and look at our goals, and we'll do that before we strike that entirely, because I think that comes right out of some of the goals related to walkability in the downtown area, but we'll check that.
Okay, on page 29, is this table going away too? Land use considerations, affordable fair housing? And those four.
Yeah, it's likely that the land use chapter will change significantly based on the conversations we started having tonight.
Yes.
Affordable fair housing, in the middle there, the new land use types of mixed residential and mixed use will allow for flexibility in housing development, hopefully allowing a new type of missing middle. Well,
That whole paragraph is going to get reworked,
okay.
as is noted by the note.
Concerned that we're not really obligated to, that's not really.
Well, anytime we missing middle, is to me, it's code for, higher intensity. And again, I think we're providing a lot of it on the map already. And, I'm very concerned, as I keep saying tonight, that people will want to put it in other places than we have it, indicated. There. On page 39, there's, again, still part of affordable housing, I'd say only 21% of homes in Hayden are occupied by renters. What do we want, 50%? What, if at all? And again, we go down to the next paragraph, to the point of missing middle. It's this, what appears to me just to be a pushing of, a promoting of higher intensity development. Again, I'll use the example. We're in a very short period of time, I think this area is going to have a significant amount of apartments and whatever. There's, I don't know, what is it, 800 or so of them right down here by Target. And again, on our borders, there's all kinds of rental availability coming in. I think that when you have that type of stuff, it's just going to already mess with our traffic issues. So that's it for me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have thoughts on those comments, or you have other things you want to talk about from the draft?
I just want to share that I concur with Councilmember Priest on higher intensity of development that is a problem. I know that I've heard argument that is how the city could generate more tax dollars, but we are so far behind right now trying to catch up with our roads, which is the #1 priority. If you increase the intensity of development, you're gonna have that many more vehicles on the roads. And it's not just Hayden, obviously, we have, like Ed says, in Coeur d'Alene, we have those apartments, but all that development out on the prairie, we have those vehicles coming in, which is, they're not contributing to our problem for fixing it, they're just contributing to our problem. And so, I don't wanna see us getting further and further in the hole with the traffic problems. So do you increase the population by 10x or in the future, or do you increase the population by 1x? And, my preference is 1x, whatever that number is. And I'm not saying the number, just saying that we can't continue on the pressure that's being put on our roads because we can't fix them. So any way we can adjust our comprehensive plan for the future here is to try to catch up. And the only way I can see how to do that is to slow things up.
Any other comments?
I didn't say shut down, I make that clear.
Well, I think you read this on page 39, it says predominance of single-family homes in the city. Isn't that what our survey said people wanted to see in the city?
They wanted to see
That's
that.
what people wanted to see, was single-family homes.
I know, but the number one priority, the problem was the roads.
Yeah, there were those roads, and then they envisioned Hayden as a single-family, and so I understand the need to say that we need to encourage the missing middle, but, we're not that far from it. And I guess it's tough, because then you leave it to the outlying cities, and does that mean more traffic coming into the city every day? Because of more and more affordable housing outside of Hayden, so what's first, the chicken or the egg, I guess?
And are we solving is anybody solving the affordable housing problem?
Right.
No. So should we try to, if no one else can?
And we probably don't have enough room to do it in anyway.
No, we're not gonna do it. Yeah.
Also, law enforcement, we need to think about that too, because the increased densities increase the need for law enforcement, and that raises the cost.
I feel the need to bring up something. Before I do, I just want to acknowledge I don't have a solution that I can offer tonight. But since I, as a member of council, have been kind of pushing or leading the effort to bring awareness on the aquifers, as well as Matt, I'm looking on page 42, and it's verbiage that pays homage to the fact that we live over the aquifer. And it references some of the regulatory agencies that that give us guidance. But it doesn't really say much more than that in terms of like, what is it that the city will or will not do. And I tread very lightly here because I understand that these kinds of things lead to infringement on private property rights, and I definitely don't want to go there. But we're kind of evolving this right now. Our own awareness here in Hayden, and we realize that we're part of a bigger community that in the whole county. So I don't know what you might recommend that we put in here in addition to this verbiage, or anybody else here on council feels that it's worthwhile, but do we feel that this is adequate as a groundwork for later on when we work on the codes? I'm asking that of everybody else.
I will say, I do think that the goals and policies address, I don't know if, I was looking to see if they address the aquifer specifically, but there are goals and policies about protecting environmentally sensitive areas.
Could you refer to that, please? What page?
Yeah, so there's, I don't have the draft in front of me, but it's the goals and policies, so it's policy 16. Donna, if you have the draft, another page number,
It's which policy?
16.
That would be right at the beginning of the
It's like page 12.
Well,
Oh, well, there's also,
Policies begin on page 11,
1506.
and the goals begin on page 9.
Okay, so 15, land use decisions will identify setbacks and.
6:16.
Identify natural resources and environmentally sensitive areas. Land use decisions will also consider the preservation of historical structures, so that's one. Do we have anything more specifically about the aquifer?
Matt, I gave you a page number last time we were looking at this. Do you remember what it was? The aquifer page?
No.
I'll hunt it down.
Sorry.
That's okay.
It's in the text.
Frankly,
It's
I'm
in
not
the
even sure it should be in here at this point, because are we getting ahead of ourselves?
Well,
And you're my colleague has been spirited along with this on me, what do you think?
well, there's two things to look at when we're looking at the aquifers: quantity and quality.
Yes.
And how should the city of Hayden do their part? If we're gonna do our part as good stewards of a natural resource, that if it gets contaminated, it's done. It's just drinking water for 500,000 people. It's an undefined aquifer. There's no protective layer between the surface and the aquifer itself. So whatever happens above will eventually get down into the ground. So if we are going to be a good steward of that, the question is, what can we do? And what regulatory authority is there with any agency? The DEQ, Panhandle Health, both have water quality under their jurisdiction. Water quantity, that's Idaho Department of Water Resources. And as you said, you tried to get them to come visit us, they don't seem to be too, yeah, okay, which would be good. But here's my one thought. When I was down at the Idaho Association of Cities a couple weeks ago, the question is, I was talking to some water engineers that deal with water quality and water, drinking water discharge from sewer plants. And I said, besides treating stormwater, say collecting it, because the question is, this goes to the bigger question, it's not our issue, but we contribute to it, is what is the carrying capacity of the Rafton Prairie Aquifer as far as building that out into an urban blanket? How does that affect the aquifer? In other words, can you build it totally out and we'll be okay? But there's no studies that have told us that what will happen. And so you could, as a city, hypothetically, you could treat all the stormwater, if you wanted to really protect the water quality. You treat all the stormwater from the roads, the subdivisions. We, in a sense, are doing that based on DEQ is saying you can build swales. They're engineered, they'll take care of the problem. But one of the contaminants is called mag chloride, and that's used for salts and of course now you have fertilizers, you have other things that can contribute to the stormwater. And I'll finish up here, Mayor, because I know he's looking at me. Is that there is another way to deal with stormwater. I talked to an engineer, and I've got her card, and they say you can have a development for not too much money to do pre-treatment of the stormwater before it goes into swales. In other words, you're giving another level of protection of that water. That may be something that we as a city may want to consider to do our part in protecting the longevity of that water source. And that could be incorporated in here also.
So in the language I found that's built into your actual narrative is on page 36.
36?
Yeah, that's your aquifer language.
And then goal number 6 says,
I was just about to hit that.
protect, preserve, and be stewards of our environment's natural areas and resources which enhance the quality of life in the city.
So that if we did hypothetically want to do a pre-treatment, that wouldn't be in here, but it would be in an ordinance.
Correct.
Correct.
And I I have a tool available to me that I asked it to maybe draft a more robust goal. She just read the one that's in there, and it gave me, protect the aquifer as the community's primary drinking water source by preventing contamination, maintaining recharge capacity, and ensuring sustainable long-term water supply through coordinated land use planning, development regulations, and resource management practices. So that's a more robust goal that you could use.
Well-
I can cut and paste it to you.
If you guys, like it,
Claude, he's my
send it
friend.
our way.
But we could add that language right into this.
We can,
into this
we
text.
can add that language right into this text. And it goes on to give some more, details about that too, that I can share with you.
And this isn't shutting down this development, this
No.
is just saying that do our part, we require you to do this, which will give preservation to a natural resource we can't afford to lose.
So this goes on,
We'll see that.
Oh,
Maybe the surroundings will see that.
you could be the leader.
Yeah.
it gives some more detailed components of this that I'll send to Donna, but it, you know, like, under water quality protection, you'd add a section that says, prevent contamination from potential pollution sources, including industrial activities, underground storage tanks, agricultural chemicals, septic systems, and stormwater runoff. So it gets right to what you're speaking to. It gives
Thanks for
some
that.
suggestion
That's
for
in here.
language on recharge area preservation. So you can just make your comprehensive plan regarding the aquifer a little more robust.
And just to let you know, DEQ, who in Panhandle Health, who have jurisdiction over water quality, they don't have any codes that specifically address stormwater.
Anyway, she quoted page 36, but that's on the clean version, and
sorry.
it's page 42 on the,
Green, red
on the
line.
red line version.
And I think we will get.
Yeah,
Is that
yeah.
more robust? Okay. Well, thank you for entertaining the concern.
Is there anything else that needs to be hit?
I'd like to address the, way back earlier, the vision statement. Let's go back to the vision statement. On a few of the.
What page?
Page 6.
The unclean or the clean version?
The green one.
The green one.
Yeah. So a few things were stricken out of it that I would like to see remaining, such as small town feel and family friendly community. I would like to see those stay in there.
How does everybody else feel about that?
Well, I guess how do we effectively communicate that we went through a year and a half process where, as a group, planning and zoning and city council approved a vision, goals, and policies, and yet every meeting, we're trying to revisit them. I feel like we're just going around in a big circle. I respect that you like that language. I got no problem with you having an opinion on it, but I don't feel like we're ever moving forward because we just keep going back and talking about the same things instead of saying, okay, we agreed on this as a group. I didn't get everything I wanted. You didn't get everything you wanted. Let's move forward.
So what are we doing here?
Well, we're trying to move forward, but I'm trying to communicate. I feel like elements keep
Right.
getting pulled backwards.
And I felt like,
And again, we had a year and a half. This is just a comprehensive plan update. We just had a 10-minute conversation on the aquifer. We have goal number 6, which protects our preserved stewards of our environment, natural resources, and enhance quality of life. And then in that, we've got 2 policies, 15 and 16, that feed exactly to that. Land use decisions will identify setbacks, infrastructure will protect identified natural resources and environmentally sensitive areas. Land use decisions will also consider the preservation of historical structures, and environmental impact analysis would be completed ahead of implementing projects that compromise previously undeveloped acreage, natural resources, environmentally sensitive areas. All this stuff is in there, and these are the broadest strokes at this level. Goals and policies are the broadest strokes. From then you, again, add language into the paragraphs to get more specific, or you have ordinances.
I think sometimes we just maybe want to approve something a little bit more, and sometimes the ideas don't come.
Understand.
Right then, and I appreciate, we all are working towards that goal, Mayor, I think.
I understand. So again, is there anything that we want to give to SCJ tonight that advances the work that has been done? Realizing that we're going to apparently have another meeting where we hammer out our future land use map.
Can we get any of these ideas out to the city council that we're looking at, so we have on these maps that have already been addressed, so that we can kind of massage them before we come to our next meeting? So we don't just come to the next meeting and kind of start all over on it.
Yeah.
That'd be helpful if we had those ideas.
Yep, I acknowledge that the new map tonight was a bit of a curveball for everyone.
But it did generate good conversation.
Right, right.
Yeah, good positive feedback. I did want to bring up one really cool graphic on page 58.
Which one?
On page 58 of the green version. You can look at either one, I don't.
Sounds like,
And this goes a lot to Council President Roeder's sentence about our traffic on our roads. I think it's important to identify that based on the updated statistics, that we have about 7,000 folks that are employed in the city limits but don't reside in the city limits, and that we have about 6,000 folks, 5,998, that live in the city and travel outside the city. And so when we're talking about trying to get people to live here and work here, it reduces the amount of traffic that is just coming in and out rather than actually being here. And so that is still, I think, every, folks bring up the fact that they like the smaller businesses, to bring the businesses here, they have to have places for their employees to live. So, I mean, it is, I get everything that you guys are saying, but I think this graphic, when you're talking transportation, this graphic speaks volumes. Just from a purely mathematical, statistical point of view.
I think as far as next steps go, it sounds like we'll talk with staff about a meeting, and probably those planning commission and city council meetings will get pushed back.
How are we doing on the budget for this project?
It's running tight at this point, so I will say.
Did council catch that?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, we had budgeted through, 2 workshops, so here we're at the end of the second one, so we did not budget for a third one, so I think that's something we'll have to talk about as well.
Yep. Okay, if there's anything else, I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Adjourn.
Thank you.
Thank you, yeah.